Can we have some quiet, please? Members of the public are entitled to record the proceedings and are requested to give prior notice so that any additional measures that may assist can be put in place. Any member of the public who has any concerns should raise them now. Are you all sorted at the back here now? Right, thank you. Right, we move on. So, item 1, apologies for absence.
Apologies from Lee Chapman, Gwilym Butler and David Minery.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, disclosable pecuniary interests. Nobody seems to be indicating, so we'll assume they're okay. Item 3, minutes. They're included. I'm quite happy to move them. I'm sure some of they're seconded. Any comments or accepted as true record? Right. I'll just see everybody indicate so we're clear. Right, thank you. Those are accepted. Item 4, scrutiny items.
None.
None. Item 5, member question time. No, I don't think there's any member questions. Item 6 is public question time. Now we have got a series of public questions. The first one on my list is submitted by the Reverend Mike Plunkett. Would you like to come chair at the front? If you press one of those buttons, you hopefully get a red light. And then we'll have you switched on. That's it.
Thank you.
Can you pull it down so you speak into it so everybody can hear?
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to say something on behalf of the Bishop's Castle area. Anyway, so my first question was, would you agree that at the present time the County Council gives more support to urban than to rural areas? And perhaps an illustration of this is the necessity for a much higher precept in Bishop's Castle as opposed to Shrewsbury. Significant reduction in public transport would increase this imbalance. The other short question, well, I've got 3, would not the Council's reduction in public transport make a nonsense of the Council's recent acceptance that we're in a climate crisis? My third question, which is the vital one for the people I live with in outer areas, have the Council considered the effect of greater isolation on the quality of life of the people of rural areas? Bishop's Castle has a 45-mile return trip to Shrewsbury. This great distance means that young people, older people, other non-drivers cannot go to town for shopping, outings, rail station or national buses. 2 very special needs for our sixth formers. We used to have a sixth form, now we haven't. They have to go to Shrewsbury or Ludlow. Our sixth formers, and also visiting Shrewsbury Hospital. And finally, we've been told about many new houses the Council requiring to be built in Bishop's Castle, but they will hardly be as desirable if there are no or very few buses.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to ask Steve Davenport, the portfolio for Transport and Highways, to respond.
Reverend Blinken, thank you very much for your question. I've got a written response here for you. As part of the development process, Section 106, SIL and commercial interests can be brokered to facilitate any transport needs. Now, I'm hoping the paper coming next will answer some of your questions, and I'm sure that we are going to be listening to everybody in the whole of Shropshire moving forward.
Thank you. The next question is submitted by Isabel Lewis.
Shall I go up there?
Yeah, if you can come forward.
So my question is, what actions have the Council taken to create the Climate Action Partnership of stakeholders and the wider community? Will the Council look at the work being undertaken by Shrewsbury Town Council in this regard with a view to adopting it as good practice within Shropshire Council?
Right. And I'm going to ask the portfolio holder, Dean Carroll, to respond.
Thank you for your question, Isabel. As was set out at full council on the 16th of May, Shropshire Council have a key leadership role to play in the response to climate change, both locally and nationally. Locally, we have great soft power in influencing the actions of communities, businesses, the voluntary sector, town and parish councils, and our own contractors. We must aim to utilise that soft power to drive more sustainable behaviours. Nationally, we have a role to play, along with other councils, to lobby government to set ambitious objectives for carbon reduction and to support local authorities in reducing their carbon emissions, all with the eventual goal of carbon neutrality. In terms of Shrewsbury Town Council, yes, I have met with Shrewsbury Town Council to discuss climate change amongst other things. It was a very productive meeting and I look forward to future meetings with them. There is no doubt plenty of good practice that we can share in both directions on carbon reduction and sustainability.
Right, thank you. The next question is submitted by Jonathan Bruton.
Thank you very much. My question is this. So can I ask the council which councillors sit on the Climate Change Task and Finish group? What are their terms of reference and have they met? If not, has a date been set for the first meeting of the group and are the minutes publicly available?
And again, I'm going to ask Dean Carroll to respond.
Thank you, Jonathan, for your question. The first meeting of the Climate Change Task and Finish group has been set for the 1st of July 2019, where the terms of reference will be agreed. Meetings of Task and Finish groups are internal council meetings meant to inform policy by taking evidence from such experts as is required. As such, they are not routinely public meetings. The conclusions of a Task and Finish group are drawn together in a final report, which includes an overview of the work it has carried out, and is then reported back to the Scrutiny Committee which set it up. The Scrutiny Committee is a meeting held in public. I will write to you, Mr. Bruton, confirming the membership of the Task and Finish group.
The next one is submitted by Adam Shipp.
Good morning.
Morning.
My question is, can I ask the council which officers sit on the Climate Change Officers Working Group? What are the group's terms of reference? Have the group met, and how often are they meeting, and are the minutes available to the members of the public?
Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, addressing climate change is a cross-cutting theme that affects all parts of the council's work and all of our employees. A working group has been established under the leadership of the Director of Place to progress the council's response to climate change and sustainability as a whole. The initial objective of the group is to map out and raise awareness of the current progress being made across all areas of the council. The group's work will then move to securing a focus on the delivery of key initiatives and review opportunities for fresh approaches and innovation. This will result in shaping a revised strategy which will also draw in contributions from sector experts. Only papers that relate to public meetings of elected members are published.
So there aren't any minutes.
Sorry, that's you're not allowed to come back. The next question was submitted by Dougal Pearce. Oh, you've turned it off when you pressed that. Now you're on now, yeah.
Morning. Has the council appointed an officer to coordinate the council's response to climate change and sustainable agenda? If not, has the council been advertised, post been advertised, and when is the appointment likely to be made? What powers will he or she have to drive change within the council? And is there a role profile that is publicly available?
Again, Councillor Dean Carroll.
Can I thank Mr. Purcell? Is it Purcell or Peirce? Peirce. Can I thank Mr. Peirce for his interest in the subject and for his question? This key role was referenced at full council on the 16th of May. I recognise that creating the capacity to deliver against our commitment is crucial to its success. I can confirm that the council is currently in the process of establishing a new sustainability officer post, which will be publicly advertised in the near future. This important role will coordinate the related work already underway across the council plus give an additional strategy and policy capacity. It will also lead in putting together our revised strategy and working to co-create and deliver projects with key partners. If Mr. Peirce or anyone else would like to track progress with this recruitment, I would ask that you make direct contact with the Executive Director of Place.
Thank you.
Right, and the last question is Charles Green. Is Charles here? No, yes, it's switched on. Yeah.
My question is tabled on behalf of CPRE Shropshire, and it concerns mainly agenda item 9, but you may recognise a common theme. So agenda item 9 is the Shropshire Local Plan Review. There is increasing recognition around the world that human activity is causing unsustainable environmental damage, both through man-made climate change and through environmental degradation and loss of species. All councillors recognise this by declaring a climate emergency. Yet Cabinet continues to pursue its growth plans through the Local Plan Review and the Economic Growth Strategy. You, Cabinet, seem unwilling to accept that continued growth leads to increased carbon emissions and increased environmental degradation to the countryside. The current plans, including those before you today, are for a further increase in Shropshire's population of some 25% over the planned period of 20 years. A 25% increase in people and their associated houses and economic activity in that very short time span is simply not sustainable or consistent with a declaration of climate emergency. We repeat our plea that at the very least the proposals within the strategic development site should be treated as part of the existing local plan review targets, not as additional to those, insofar as they are likely to be completed within the planned period. But the question we now ask highlights this conflict between the declaration of a climate emergency and the continued pursuit of unsustainable growth. The question is simply this: what annual carbon emissions are presently made from human activity within Shropshire, and what extra annual carbon emissions will be generated from the extra human activity planned within the current local plan review and the related economic growth strategy? Thank you.
Right. Now, the question was aimed at Councillor Rob Macy, so I'll ask Rob to choose.
No, the question was about climate change.
Sorry. Right, so I'm going to start with Councillor Rob Macy.
As Councillor Dean's explained already, there are a number of cross-cutting issues, and whilst this is related to item 9, which is in my name, and obviously we're taking account of that during the local plan, I am going to ask Dean with his specific hat on to cover that off in terms of the climate change.
Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles, for the question and the full background information provided. As was stated at full council on the 16th of May, we have already started the work of establishing a baseline of emissions, as we believe that understanding where we are currently is an important part of developing the climate action plan that will be produced. Reducing carbon emissions is not about growth per se, but about the right growth, about having the right home in the right place and sustainable employment opportunities. For example, that is why we support key worker housing, because it's about helping to place our key workforce in affordable and good quality homes within the communities they serve. The point is that future population growth will not necessarily result in a net growth of carbon emissions. We are exploring a package of measures that are aimed at reducing net carbon emissions and increasing the sustainability of our places, economies and communities for the future generations.
Okay, thank you very much. We move on to item 7, Shropshire Council Supported Bus Services, Budget 2019-2020. The Deputy Portfolio Holder who's been doing some of the work on this is Simon Harris, so I'll ask him to start, and then
I'll just introduce.
Okay, Steve Davenport first, and then.
Yeah. I just want to thank Simon for the hard work he's put in with officers with this report. It's been a large consultation, and I think you will understand that we have listened, albeit moving forward, we do want to change how transport is delivered in Shropshire. As the Reverend said, and many other people said, we have to start thinking differently and out of the box. But Simon, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, the purpose of the report for the Cabinet to consider the proposed reduction or removal of the number of subsidised bus services in Shropshire following a public consultation into proposals. In March 2019, the Council launched a 6-week consultation into the proposed reduction of its public transport budget, which would have seen a fall in a number and frequency of the bus services subsidised by the Council and a saving of £405,000 from the Council's public transport budget. The consultation document was circulated to various stakeholders, including town, parish councils, schools, colleges, voluntary and community sectors, transport operators and the Shropshire Bus User Group, Shrewsbury Business and Improvement District. The consultation received a high number of responses, 956, and highlighted that many of the people that use public transport in Shropshire are reliant upon these services to undertake their daily lives, and a lack of transport, especially in rural areas, is known to contribute to social exclusion and isolation. This can be particularly impact on the elderly and those with disabilities and the younger families on low incomes. This has been clearly highlighted in the consultation with the responses received. The report recommends that services are not reduced or removed as proposed in the consultation. However, the Council would instead look to save £180,000 by focusing on efficiencies or cost savings that were identified in the consultation feedback. Therefore, £225,000 of the £405,000 budget reduction within the Council's financial strategy will not be achieved and will be subject to revised proposals. Proposed changes to the Shrewsbury Park and Ride service, which would save the Council some £50,000, set to go ahead as planned. These changes will come into effect on the 1st of September and include increasing the main fare from £1.60 to £2, removing the group ticket that allows up to 5 people to travel for £2.50 and removing of the 50% concessionary fare discount. Any further reviews would sit alongside existing work to develop transport vision and strategy from Shropshire that encapsulates all forms of transport, including public transport, park and rides, and it also takes into account that the Council's emerging rural and community strategy and the recent decision by Shropshire Council to declare a climate emergency. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'll ask Steve Davenport to put the recommendations forward, but there are going to be some alterations to what's in the report. So Steve, you start, and I may need to add some as we go along.
Yes, I see the recommendations as proposed, except the one that I disagree on is the 50% reduction on concessionary fares on the park and ride. I want this to go to a task and finish group, but at the moment we will retain that. The rest is correct. The £1.60 will go to £2. As the park and ride roll needs to roll out further, we need to be running that in a different way. And being, as everybody would agree, I'm sure, being increasing park and ride, not decreasing, and being letting people be able to use it in a different way and even more. I also agree, I think Simon did mention the group ticket will be retained, family ticket. This will probably be a 2x2, and we will come back to the cost of that in there if you like.
So if I can just tidy up what you've just said. So if we look on page 6, so 2.1, local bus services, that stays the same. The 2.2, 1 is okay. 2 is okay because it's saying take out the group ticket. We need with 3, we need to refer 3 to not implement 3, but refer the matter to scrutiny. Is that the right wording for you? Yeah, right. I'm just looking at legal. We need to put in that we agree that a family ticket be introduced, which should be 2 hours Unlike you, I don't think we should restrict it to 2 children, because
Okay.
some families have
There's
more.
some terminology
Yeah.
around that.
Two adults
Yeah.
and as many children as reasonable, or something like that, you know, because there are some bigger families around. And then the final one would be to agree the proposed changes could be effective from the 1st of September. And then the 2-3 stays the same. Is that all right? Does that all make sense to you, girls?
2-4 stays the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to be clear, only 2-3 changes.
Two-
That goes to scrutiny.
Yeah, it'd be not implemented but referred to scrutiny. And then I didn't know whether you wanted to put in about the family ticket somewhere along the line. So
I think the wording of the family ticket would probably also need to go to scrutiny.
okay, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, that will be dealt with scrutiny. Yeah. Okay, Simon.
And then, Leader, we have plans to go back to public consultation during the autumn on any changes that we propose.
Okay, yeah, that can be added at the bottom as well. Do we need to do that, or we'll do it anyway? I don't think we need to actually, but that will happen. Right, I've got a number of members who've indicated they'd like to speak. I'll start with Councillor David Turner.
Thank you, Leader. The 6-week consultation, which came out a few weeks ago, declared it was looking for a reduction in the number and frequency of bus services subsidised by the council. In the majority of cases, this was said to be representing a reduced timetable on each of the services the council supports. And I had particular concern about the 436, which is the Bridgnorth to Shrewsbury route, and the 8, which runs from Telford through Broseley to Bridgnorth. Bridgnorth and those other towns have no alternative public transport. Anything on the A458 has to go by road. There was a lot of concern about education, employment, the local economy, hospital visits in particular, and clearly there were also there was also a lot of comment about reduction in emissions. The responses to the 436 are amongst the highest of 119 responses, and I did note that we're talking now about efficiencies and cost savings, and that there will be revised proposals coming forward. Folk who are using this bus route need some assurance about it, so that they can plan ahead. So if someone's going to college in Shrewsbury, they want to ensure that the bus is going to run the duration of their course, and there's been a good deal of concern that may not be the case. And in terms of local economy, certainly many of our small towns have got fragile economies, and the bus is very helpful in that respect. So as soon as possible, can we have some assurance that we're not going to be confronted with further challenges to public transport?
I think one of the things about all this is we don't necessarily want to cut buses, we want to deliver the service more efficiently. And I think that's the challenge going forward, whether it would be different procurement or different sized buses or different routes. But we don't intend to try and pull lots of buses away. We try and deliver the service in a different way. And actually, you talk about school transport, public transport. I do wonder if we can link the two together more in the future, because sometimes we're running school buses and subsidised buses on the same routes, and we need to try and work things more clearly together.
That may be the case. With respect, the consultation did not talk about running things a different way. It talked about cuts.
Yeah,
Full stop.
but we're moving forward
Sorry,
now.
can I just come back? Sorry, David. But I think you've heard that we're not doing that right now, and we don't hope to do that. As Peter's alluded to, we need to do things in a different way. We need to use more public transport. Many of these people in this room have alluded to via Dean this morning. So it's delivered in a different way. We've got to think out of the box. We've got to start doing things differently and using it more, all of us. Because a lot of these buses are running with a few people on, so we've got to get more people into them to make them more commercially viable.
Leader, if I may just say one other thing, and I made this point in the context of in the context of a different topic the other day. That is that there is no promotion for buses. The timetables are invisible. We need to do far more to get people onto the buses. I'm sure there's a way forward. It's very simple.
And I think that's my point.
Councillor Pauline Dean was next.
Thank you, Leader.
Just turned it off, I think, not on. Oh, try again. No, we haven't got anything.
Green, got a green light though. Thank you.
No. Ah, there you are.
Okay. Right, thank you very much. It's nice to be back. I thank you very much for the removing the worries about the 511. I think I had more contact from the members of the public from INWEM, well, the total of my division, which covers a large area. The largest response about the changes that were to be made to the 511, and I thank you for removing the worries of people. As you can see on page 10, I think they were the number of responses was the most in all of the responses from the public. I don't think that the public are really aware that why there is such a to-do about the buses. It's because
no, you're doing fine, don't worry.
Okay. But the public are not aware of it, that it's not the Shropshire Council or any of the councils that made any changes to the buses. It was when all the bus service was deregulated in 1986. So obviously the bus service became a free market. And when you look at page 7, 4.1, you know, I think if the public could read that, they could understand why we're in the state that we are in now. That we, as a council, and we, the public in the county, are having to subsidise those bus services that are used as well as perhaps those that are around Shrewsbury or the other larger market towns. I'm really pleased that the family ticket is going to be looked into, because we do have a lot of people that use the park and ride that come from my division, and also the removal of the discretionary discount, because there are so many pensioners that, like myself, who are very, perhaps I should declare an interest, except I don't use the bus, because they don't fit in to come up to the Shire Hall. I would. I'm so pleased because I've had, again, more representation, because I do a mobile surgery of Thursdays, and this is what I'm constantly being spoken to about. You look at the key themes on page 11, and all the areas of concern there: social isolation, environmental, economic impact, work, education, etc. And all of these are really, really vital elements that we have a really good bus service, so that it fits in, that the people can get around the county. And just thank everybody very much, and thank you, Simon, and Steve, for all the work, and the officers, of course, for all the work that they've done.
Okay. Matt Shinton was next.
Yeah.
That's it?
Yes, really, I just want to raise the peculiarity of my area, where sadly the contract for any public service is with Worcestershire County Council, who are proving to be extremely difficult to contact or to have any discussions. However, Shropshire does provide a subsidy for that service, which is the 292 from Kidderminster over the Clee Hills through Clibberry Mortimer and down into Ludlow. The importance of that actually is post-16 education, because my post-16s both go to Kidderminster and to Ludlow, and indeed they will often catch trains in either of those to take them to Worcester or to Hereford or wherever they're going to have further post-education. It's also, for me, an extremely important thing from the health point of view. You will have all seen the consultation for Future Fit, and one of the things wherever you went that was raised was transport and its difficulty with getting to health provision. And indeed, that's absolutely what the 292 does for us. We've got a dog's breakfast of a contract at the moment, which Worcestershire County Council put together. It's up for review. I thought it was up for review this year, but they tell me now that it's up for review next year. I would ask that you would give all the support you can to our officers who've been very meticulous and done their very best to get through to Worcestershire County Council. to make a better job of the contract, or if ever it was possible, and I know it's difficult because I've asked local bus companies, would you do the job, to bring the contract back into our control in Shropshire, because we're not doing very well. So that's the 292. It's on page 19, right at the end there. All I ask is when you do this consultation in September, you actually include that bus as well. Thank you.
And the officers are all present, and I'm sure
Yes,
they're
I know, I know they are.
taking it on board. Before I move on, because I've got some others, I mean, I'm not going to quote figures because, you know, I've been told I mustn't, but that's a list of all the subsidised services. And some of the figures on there are absolutely frightening, the cost to run in some of these subsidies. And I think that the question is, can we do things differently and not have to subsidise them by so much money? Not necessarily, but procure them and do them in a different way, like you say, more efficiently than they're being done at the moment. Right,
I would
next on
welcome
my...
that, because I'm sure there's a better way.
Yeah. Heather Kidd first, and then Claire Wilde.
Okay.
Thank you very much indeed. There are a number of issues I'd just like to raise about this report, not least that I'm actually very pleased that we put up off doing anything until January 2020, but for the 553 bus, which runs from Bishop's Castle through my division for people who have no other transport, the risk of losing that was huge, and you see that the figures in the consultation were very, very good indeed. We're standing at 140, which for a single bus route was the second highest and with quite a small population. All of the things that have been flagged up around social isolation and so on hold absolutely true for that particular area. I think my concerns around the whole thing was that when the consultation came out, there were no recorded impact studies at all, because I asked for them, and I was told they would be done afterwards. Fine, but actually the number of households with only one car that's out of work, the number of households with no cars for some of our, for my area and for Bishop's Castle are a fundamental part of that. And actually, if we looked at that in a different way, then maybe the 553 wouldn't have been there. So there's a bit about joined up thinking. I'm also concerned that actually the local plan, which should be going out for its last consultation, uses one of the sustainability points system around bus routes. And if you begin to pull the rug under those bus routes now, without thinking about all of that, then where do we put the local plan and their consultation? So that's just a bit of internal, can we join it all up a bit better, please? As I say, I am very grateful that we're beginning to look at this. The public's concern always is that when we're saying we're going to do things differently, it usually means it doesn't happen at all. It's a cut. So I'm hoping that there's an absolute assurance that those central bus routes in the day, which are really important for the public, because the young ones go to college on the 553 in the morning and come back at 4:30. We'll have people going to work and can't come back if we cut buses after that. And during the day, I have a young man, for instance, who doesn't have lessons on a Wednesday afternoon, so he gets on the bus from SCAT, from the Sixth Form College, and goes and volunteers as a lifeguard in Spark. That's good for his CV, but it's also good for Spark. There are lots and lots of stories like that I can give you, including the lady who has to go for mental health appointments once every 2 weeks. They're not using the bus every day of the week, but they're using the bus regularly, and they're not adding to the numbers. What I would also ask you to do is check that the bus companies are checking their bus fares. Those people who get on with the 60 plus, 65 plus bus pass, because they don't always write them down properly, or they don't always note them, they just wave people through, and therefore they're not added into the numbers being used. And I once proved that on the 558, where we were told that nobody was using it on a Saturday morning, and yes they were. If you drove along behind the bus, it was certainly being used, it's just that they weren't noting down the numbers of people using a bus pass. My last one is, Sixth Form students have a much rawer deal in the rural areas than those living in town, because their bus pass means they can use it 7 days a week at any time of the day. our bus passes are on the bus out and the bus back 5 days a week. That's it. They're not very flexible. So those people...
Just so I'm clear, that's only because the service isn't there, not because the bus
No,
pass...
no, it's because the bus pass is only valid.
Oh, I didn't understand
No,
that.
no.
So-
The Arriva buses do a really good bus pass for in Shrewsbury.
Yeah.
And my students are all saying, but they can use their bus passes all the time. We can't.
I didn't know, I will get that looked at, because I
Thank
don't know
you.
the answer to that. Right.
And it's a rural issue.
Yeah, okay.
So thank you very much, and cuts don't mean cuts. Or a bypass to take the heat out of this, please.
No.
Look, can I just come back on that? The reason that we've done this, and not put things on hold, but this is highlighting the strengths and weaknesses of what not only Shropshire Council deliver, what the providers deliver, and we listen to that. And we have got to do things differently. We understand that, and we're the largest inland county. It's massive. Obviously, it has its problems, but we've got to look how we move forward. It's things like, do we have an Uber type system? And I'm just putting this in there. I'm not saying we should. But there's lots of different ways to. I think we can fly. We're listening to what other counties do and how we can feed into that, how we can get ideas from them. But again, this has been a really good consultation because it has highlighted the strengths and weaknesses that we have to act on.
Okay, Claire Wild was next.
Joining up.
Thank you very much. Right, the first thing is, I think it's pointless going out to consultation in September until you do what's Lever suggested, this root and branch look at the buses. Personally, I feel that you have all the information, everybody who ever goes on a bus, Arriva have all that information. So if I ring up and I ask who's going on what route, what are the numbers like, I can find that information out. Now I think you need to be a bit smarter, go through all those things, see if people are, you need smaller buses in the middle of the day, perhaps smaller electric buses. Because we need a sustainable transport system that works for everybody. So maybe in the mornings, peak times, the big buses, maybe later in the day, the smaller buses, green buses. But I think we need to go out somewhere and get some proper information about what we can do, because I think it's a much bigger piece of work than what our offices can do. But it's absolutely pointless. We're good at consulting, but we keep consulting and consulting and consulting. Our time would be much better spent actually doing something positive for all the people that use those services and for the environment by using cleaner, smaller, hopefully in some cases, electric buses. And just to give you an example of why I think there ought to be a root and branch review, just 3 years ago, the 436 was actually a commercial service. Now at the moment, as you and our Director of Place has said on the radio, there's a subsidy of £250,000. That's not right. That cannot be right. So, that should form part of the work that you're doing. So I'd say don't go out and consult. Actually, go and get somebody to do a proper piece of work. Reflecting where we are, reflecting our climate emergency, reflecting the needs of our older people, reflecting the needs of the youngsters, and get a service fit for the 25th century.
And we are starting to talk to other councils, particularly some of the more rural councils, to see what they do in other areas of the country, because some of them do have better ideas than we do in the very rural parts of, places like Northumbria or Devon. They do things slightly differently. So there are a number of options, but it is going to take a little time. So you're probably right, September's too early to do anything. But before we do anything, once we get our thoughts together, we will consult again.
Yeah, but I think over and above that, you have to keep it fairly simple, because you know where the people use the buses. You know that the majority of the people in the day who use the buses are either school kids or the elderly.
So
Yeah.
my
All
thought
the
would
figures
be
are right. It's quite, the demand is first thing in the morning and in the evening, and during the day it's less, but it's still there.
but it's how we manage that in an environmentally friendly way.
Steve?
You're absolutely right, and that's what I've taken on board. That's what I've taken out of this consultation. And it's not about cutting, it's actually about providing more. You know, it's talking to Robert with the place plan, which is what I'm doing. And I call my friend here Green Dean, because actually, you know, it's his part of his job. We should be running greener buses. We should be running, but we should also be running smaller ones where it's required. So it's listening to everybody and putting the right vehicles in the right areas.
So we would be much better using our time on that rather than another consultation, I think. Thank you.
Right. Next on the list was Alan Mosley.
I'm slightly bemused by what's going on here. There does seem to be elements of complete and utter chaos.
There's no
collapse.
chaos, sorry, there's
Collapse.
absolutely no chaos at all.
Well, I just heard all the things you should have done before reaching this point and haven't done from one of your members, who I agree with completely. These are not things that are cutting edge. The considerations she's just been putting forward, they are things that are common garden practice throughout, and that anybody could raise and could put on the table before you were causing all the upset, all the confusion and all the concern in the original documentation. Point I'd like to make is particularly about the park and ride. I really can't understand why you're not proposing the same with the park and ride as you are with the other proposals related to the more rural transport systems. That is, look at it properly, take advice, and involve yourselves in proper study. There's no doubt that the increase in charges there will undermine the usage of park and ride, and it impacts on the differential between park and ride and coming into the town centre and using town centre car parks. It's clear that will be the case, and symbolically it's significant, quite apart from the actual differences that will come about from behaviour. I know that the town council have been consulted and have written their opposition to it, or our opposition, and in particular they made points about the way in which certain initiatives have been taken with park and ride in the past that has led to increased usage around certain events. They've got ideas that might lead to greater efficiency and better provision that can bring more people, getting more people involved in it. I'd just like to ask the portfolio holder if anyone has taken up the offer that was within that consultation to talk seriously, both with the town council and with the bid. It's one of the reasons why I'm saying that this whole thing should be put into the pot that you put the rural services in, and delay it until proper study, proper consultation, and talking to these people and others a bit more. Clearly, both in the consultation and around the table today, there's been a substantial amount of talk about the climate impact of these changes, and the incongruity of these changes being put forward when you've just passed a motion relating to carbon emissions and intent to do something about it in terms of the emergency. I would just ask whether the portfolio holder for climate change does not now agree with the proposals that were put forward on the debate at the council, that all reports coming forward relating to changes one way or another within council business should have a separate item on illustrating, highlighting and reporting on the impact that those changes may have on climate change. And will he ensure that that is the case for all portfolio holders of all reports coming to this council? But it's not just climate change that these measures countermand, in a sense. It's also the big town plan. that we, the Shropshire Council, the Town Council, BID, and a whole host of organisations are supporting very strongly, and the way forward for that will shortly be announced, as you know. The Big Town Plan says that we'll all work towards shifting the balance of priority given to movement across the town from private car to walking and cycling, and greater use of rail and bus services. And it also commits everyone to working cohesively to this end. It's quite clear that some of the changes that are being proposed, and I'm pleased that you've retracted many of them in terms of the amendments today, will run counter, entirely contrary to those objectives. So I'd ask you to pull the report on Park and Ride, put it with the other considerations, much of it's been delayed anyway, till there's a task and finish, till the task and finish group had a look at it, and stay with the status quo until the whole process can be put right and the chaos and confusion can be ameliorated. I'm pleased with the comment on climate change that Dean Carroll has made. He will be scrutinised very carefully to ensure that what he says actually comes to fruition. What's being proposed today is going to make it more difficult to deal with becoming carbon neutral than it is, and it flies in the face of those laudable objectives that he's disseminated today, and in fact shows that the council perhaps is failing a bit on the first hurdle when push comes to shove on climate change.
Rather than letting everybody respond at the moment, I would just point out that every report does have a risk assessment and opportunities appraisal in it, and it's within that I expect the climate change to be addressed. Roger, you were next.
Thank you, Peter. Note the alterations. As far as I can see, nothing has been cancelled. It's just been referred to a task and finish group to look at it for more work to be done, to look at alternatives that are there. £180,000 is now the reduction in the subsidy, which is welcome, although the 180,000 I still have difficulty. You've heard the comments from the rural areas and the effect that any reduction in buses would have on those areas. Efficiency, we've got to go. I note that there's £265,000 at present given to help community transport groups, the 50 groups that's there. I would hope they will not be altered, because they do provide a much valued service to the rural areas. But I also know that many other authorities are using electric buses for their park and ride. There's a £120 million bus fund being launched and a £40 million from government as well. There's no mention of that in here. I would hope the task and finish group or whatever, that can be referred to them. We've got capital. It would improve the air quality, because the original proposal on the park and ride, as is highlighted by the bid, would to me have made the air quality in Shrewsbury worse because of the number of vehicles that would have been accessing the town. So I welcome the reference to the task and finish group, but I would hope that they can come forward, maybe for electric buses, to have all their park and ride electric buses, as many other towns are, which would really, really put Shrewsbury in the forefront and improve our air quality. As I say about the community transport, 265,000, I think that's money well spent. It may well need to be looked at to improve it, but I wouldn't say maybe more money, because a lot of it is volunteers, and they do more, notwithstanding the proposals that were made by government about drivers for community transport, which did raise a number of questions. But yet, I welcome this reference to further looking at. Disappointed that a number of residents in Shropshire may well have been alarmed and fearful when there was no need. People have been fearful of losing their jobs, of not being able to get to places. Hopefully, what's been said this morning will help them, but hopefully we can actually reassure them in the next few months that their buses will do. And finally, I see there was a Shropshire Bus Strategy 2017 to 2021. That is not listed as a background paper. I would hope that that paper, which is quite an informative paper, can actually be looked at by this task and finish group, because it does do an analysis of all the different forms of transport. And it says for consultation December 2016, but it does provide useful background. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just, quickly? All right, quickly. Again, just on both those, you know, these aren't highlighted, the strengths and weaknesses. I've said that. And just to reply to both of those, when we don't listen to the consultation, we're dictating, and when we do, we're in chaos. So, you know, well, we are listening, and we're damned if we do, damned if we don't, but we are moving forward to a round.
Right, I've got Julian Dean next.
Yes, thank you very much. There's the other Dean Green in the room. I wasn't actually planning to speak on this, but I just wanted to make one observation about something Peter said earlier when you were waving a piece of paper about the subsidies. Just in terms of language, I really think it's important if we're moving forward and trying to think about these things differently. Why is supporting bus services a subsidy, but filling potholes and building roads an investment? Actually, they're both investments. Getting people around the town and around the county, that's an investment in people, and I think we should think of it in those terms rather than as a subsidy. Thank you.
The problem is, I have to deal with the finance ultimately, and it's trying to make the books balance. We end up having, is always the final question. Pauline D is next.
Yes, thank you, Lee, for me come back again. After Councillor Wilde was talking about electric buses, I just had an idea. We ought to have electric chargers on every car park that we own. So that would help if we could get electric buses going through the county and they'd be able to charge. And then also, the public find it very difficult if they do have an electric car to get their car charged if they haven't got access to a drive to put it in. So I don't think it should be just an initiative just for Shrewsbury. It should be just for the whole of the county that we can get, you know, and this would help again with pollution and help with our climate change.
We are looking at electric chargers. Now, I don't pretend to be an expert, but there is an issue about whether you have a charge that takes, say, 6 hours to charge, or whether you can get a quick charge. And the quick charge ones need different electric supplies to the slow ones. And we're looking at how we can achieve that in some of the car parks and places like that. But it's not straightforward.
Yeah, can I just say, my son was over from Australia and he was reviewing a Volkswagen car for them, and he was using an electric car because that's his business, his environment. And he had a terrible job to get anywhere. He had to go to a private hotel to get it charged. And then when he was making his way over to Bristol, he was told it was 50 miles away to go and get it charged on a particular way, and they've got to be all coordinated, all these, because if we're going to be serious about climate control, we've got to do something, you know, and we can lead in this.
No, I agree, we can do lots, and I don't know whether Steve wants to come back, but I'm going to move to a decision.
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
I think we've had a good discussion. There is the recommendations on page 6. They have been amended. Does everybody understand the amendments? Right. Can I see all those in favour then, please show. Right, thank you. Right, that was unanimous. So I think we'll move on. So, right. I think that's all we need to do on that item. So we move on now to item 8, the Shropshire Hills Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty Management Plan 2019 to 24, Shropshire Hills AONB Partnership Terms of Reference. I'll start with Leslie Pickford.
Thank you, David. Delighted to be presenting the Shropshire Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty Partnership Management Plan for ratification by Cabinet. Obviously not everybody's as interested in it as I am, but there we go. This plan sets out the partnership's priorities for the next 5 years in conserving and enhancing the beauty of the Shropshire Hills AONB, which does cover 23% of Shropshire. We are extremely privileged to have a nationally recognised AONB within our county, and we need to ensure that we look after it for generations to come. Yes, the area of outstanding natural beauty just trips off the tongue, that, doesn't it? Is about beauty, But natural beauty means also about how we use it, the environment functions that keep us alive and also supports our well-being. You know, it's not just about nice views. The AONB can help us deliver our corporate priorities. The landscape supports health and well-being and also underpins our economy. But to do this, just like with capital resources, we need to continue to invest in them, the people and the communities around them. Within the plan, and I don't hide from this, Shropshire Council is actually criticised for not making the most of its AONB or taking it seriously. That bit did upset me slightly. I can tell you that as a council we take our responsibility to the Shropshire Hills very, very seriously. And most importantly, I'm pleased to report that in the last few months there's been a much, much closer working relationship between ourselves and the partnership. The Shropshire Hills is certainly one of the jewels in Shropshire's crown, if not the jewel. The partnership will continue to work with the council to ensure it is valued and looked after an asset. But I'm going to turn that round, because I'm going to say to the partnership that Shropshire Council will continue to work with the partnership to ensure that the area of outstanding natural beauty is valued and looked after. I thank the partnership for its continued hard work, and I'm happy to move the recommendations. And if I can just add that I also want to thank them for yesterday, where we were taken out for a day in the Shropshire Hills. As you can imagine, that was quite interesting, to see some of the brilliant work that they're doing up there in terms of both the landscape and also the sustainable tourism. And I should also point out that our AONB is the only AONB in the UK to have the Sustainable Tourism Award. We need to make more of that. Leader, very happy to read the recommendations.
I'm happy to second, and like you, I value the work. I'm not sure Shropshire Council have always valued it as much as they should, but we will continue to work very well together. Any other comments around the room? No? Can I see all those then in favour of the report? Right, thank you very much. We move on to item 9, Shropshire Local Plan Review, consultation of preferred strategic development sites. Start with Councillor Rob Macy.
Thank you, Leader. So this is the 4th significant stage of public and stakeholder involvement we're doing as part of the partial review of the Shropshire Local Plan. As you know, the national regulations require us to have an up-to-date local plan to keep local control over our planning decisions. I'll just start with the previous stage of consultation and the changes that's meaning that we're making. Due to the scale and the nature of the proposals we've received back from previous consultation and the volume of feedback, we're actually updating the timetable for undertaking local plan review in order that we can take account of that. So you'll see in the appendix that we've got a revised timescale which is moving forward. That's because we had around 3,600 unique responses to the previous stage of consultation. We had analysis done on this for us, and we've identified key issues relating to windfall sites, the release of land from the greenbelt, the need for a glossary of technical terms, which have been extremely helpful, the local infrastructure capacity, and the urgent need for affordable housing. We will be making this analysis available and with detailed comments on the specific settlements, and that will be up on the website during the consultation period. Moving on to what we're proposing to go out to consultation on in the recommendations, the proposed consultation identifies preferred strategic sites in Shropshire. These sites, as promoted, have the opportunity to boost access to housing, employment, training, local services, and importantly, the accompanying infrastructure. There will be a number of other side benefits to them, but at this stage, we've had these through. So at the moment, there is sufficient evidence and justification from officers that the former Ironbridge Power Station at Billbus, the Clyde Barracks at Turnhill, and RAF Cosford. These would be put forward as preferred strategic sites for allocation. The 4th site, which has been promoted to us at the moment on Junction 3 of the M54, it's felt that we require further evidence and justification before any judgment can be made on that. So at this stage, that is not being put forward as a preferred site. However, we do feel it's appropriate that we go out to seek people's views on that, as it's been widely promoted, and give people a chance to have their say on it. Once we get to the draft stage of the plan preparation, there would be an opportunity as well, once we've received that further evidence, to take part in consultation at that stage on it as well. So we've got, in terms of the consultation process itself, we're intending to run it, we know it's running over the summer, so we're actually going to extend the consultation a bit longer than we normally have. We're going to run it for 10 weeks, running between July and September. The documents will be available as they have been previously. If people have taken part previously, they can either go online to access them, or they are available at libraries and council offices in the main towns. There's a number of people who have registered to receive notifications of when each stage of the consultation is released. They'll be notified of this, and we expect that we're going to continue to work with the parish and town councils during the consultation period to understand fully the implications that these sites would have with them. In terms of this, we will use this to inform the next stage of the local plan review, which will be the formal consultation on a full pre-submission version of the revised local plan. That's now expected in spring 2020. We're hoping for the end of this year that will now be in spring 2020, after which the council expects to formally submit the local plan together with any formal objections to the planning inspectorate. So it's at that stage that the planning inspector to the plan that we put forward. So at this stage, I know there's a number of local members, I think, that want to speak on this. So
yeah, I have got a little list. Councillor Malcolm Pate was first on the list.
As an ex-member of the Combined Authority and an ex-member of the RAF Costa Task Group, I'm quite afraid with their objectives, their strategic, not having enough brownfield sites to fulfil their own strategy. Now with RAF Cosford, I don't have a problem at all with what's been suggested at RAF Cosford. We fully support anything that helps keep Cosford where it is an important part of Albrighton. There's a close ties between RAF Cosford and Albrighton and the surrounding parishes. However, the fourth option, which I'm pleased to say you're not taking forward as a preference, I can't say I would actually meet our strategy to meet our strategy in numbers. And I consider, and a lot of other people in Albrighton surrounding parishes consider it in totally the wrong place. I think it's obtuse to say the West Midland Combined Authority hasn't got enough brownfield sites to fulfil its structure. Yet they're suggesting, or it is being suggested, that we actually take out Greenbelt to provide that necessary space for more employment and for more housing. I don't think it's housing particularly that Shropshire needs. I mean, what Shropshire needs is to generate more business rates to help carry on providing the cash to deliver the necessary services. So I support that, and the Ironbridge Power Station and the Turnhill Barracks, I think, are ideal places where we should pursue our objectives in that area. There was a press release, I think from you, Rita, but I'm not sure, about there being a lot of opposition to the development north of the M54. I can tell you there is a great deal of concern in Albrighton and surrounding nations. Parishes. The parishes regarding that development we find is totally unnecessary. We don't see it's our job to fulfil national criteria about house building, and I would urge the Cabinet to take that fourth element out completely. It's going to cause a lot of concern to a lot of people in East Shropshire. There are already action groups being formed, there's already a lot of opposition to it, and I would ask you to look at that very seriously again and take that out of the options. RF Cosford, I think would be generally supported. Ironbridge Power Station would be generally supported, and Turnhill Barracks as sensible places to develop that. The objective of this village around Tongue, which is fundamentally would change the whole area dramatically, is not welcome, it's not wanted, and it's causing a great deal of concern to the surrounding parishes.
I take on board what you say. I have to say, when I go on the train between Wolverhampton and Birmingham, they tell me there's no room for houses, and you see lots of brownfield sites, and you do wonder how it all stacks up. So I have sympathy with what you say.
Yeah, but it seems an absolutely abnormality to me to sort of the West Midlands Conservation saying, we haven't got a greenfield site, so why don't you change some of your green belt, which is very precious in East Shropshire. Thank you.
Thank you. And the other comment I'd make is there are exciting developments proposed at RAF Cosford which are incorporated into this consultation, because not only do RAF Cosford want to increase what they're doing quite dramatically, there are plans for an academy for aviation skills within the area, which we also believe would be of huge benefits to Shropshire. So there's a lot going on in that area, and I think everybody is generally supportive of that. It is Tong and the Junction 3 developments that cause the issues. Right, next on my list was Councillor David Turner.
Thanks again, Leader. My concern, my concern surrounds Ironbridge Power Station, which is going to be allocated as a strategic site proposally. I think most people recognise that this redundant site must and will be developed. The recent consultation into housing numbers and site allocations was conducted without including the impact of the Ironbridge regeneration. And in Montrenlock, my patch, responses seem to be an acceptance of the need for about 150 new homes over the planning period to 2036. But the impact of this development on several local settlements will be substantial. There are concerns about the cumulative impact of 1,000 new homes and mixed-use development will have on Ironbridge, Builders, especially Montrenlock. All other issues apart, the additional traffic, the pressure on schools and other medical facilities over a wide area will be unbearable in the short term. There's widespread concern that carefully phased growth in Montrenlock and the other local settlements may be blown out of the water by major housing growth on our doorstep from about 2022. The impact of traffic on from this development, when built on the narrow streets of Montrenlock, running as they do through the conservation area, is something we really don't want to contemplate. May I request that we reopen the debate about the distribution of housing numbers and the impacts during this process, and maybe look at the phasing of development, because I have a fear that we're going to have an awful lot very, very quickly, and there's going to be significant damage.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Julian Deans, next on the list.
Thank you very much. 2 points. Firstly, I'd really like to echo this point about the West Midlands brownfield or lack of brownfields and building on greenfields here. It's not just whether it's available, it's also understanding the issues of sustainability. Building homes in urban areas is so much more sustainable in terms of infrastructure, in terms of transport, in terms of all of those things. So yes, it may well be more expensive to convert old factory sites, but absolutely we need to be pushing back against that, insisting that that's where sustainable development should really be taking place rather than greenfield sites. My concern is about page is the development scheme and the timings on it. We've now I know that there was a supplementary planning document on affordability, and that now seems to have disappeared from view in terms of being reviewed. It just seems to me that we are in danger of losing the opportunity within the local plan review of looking at precisely some of the policy issues around type and affordability, and in particular around energy efficiency and around the transport infrastructure that is required in new developments. If we don't take the opportunity within the local plan review, now whether that means reviewing core strategy or whether it means putting the supplementary planning documents into this timetable, but this document seems to explicitly says that those sorts of things are of less importance this time round, that they will be looked at some stage. I think that's a real mistake. I think we need to be looking at those policies
while at exactly the same time as we're looking at the sites. Otherwise, we're going to end up, as I've said before, we're going to end up in a situation where we're going to have to retrofit buildings that have only just gone up, and that's crazy. We need to have the right policies in place along with the local plan review so that we don't build stuff that will add to CO2 emissions and that will make sustainable transport even more difficult.
Thank you. Roger, I think you.
Yeah. Commenting on two of those sites, Iron Bridge to me is a missed opportunity. I echo Malcolm Pate's comment about the council needs to generate more business rates. Iron Bridge Power Station site, ideal site to expand the business on. We don't get many of those, and
But it does include huge amounts of employment on the site.
And 1,000 homes. We could attract, market it, assist with work with the developers there to actually market the site to get not warehouses, but to get some really high-class jobs, well-paid jobs on that.
But I'm sorry,
site.
Roger, I think you're wrong. I think the proposals do include exactly that. I don't think you've understood the document.
I think I have, Chairman. I've worked that site. I know what that site is capable of. 1,000 homes to actually do it. I think there is more availability on that site to generate business rates than is at present proposed. I'd also like to comment on page 162 or page 27, and it's the M54 site, extension 3. Note this, and again, I note the comments because the comments have come back to me about the fear, worry that residents have about that site. And is there any timescale that you know of when Shropshire Council will be able to give reassurance or let residents know exactly what is being proposed there? Because at present it's just a kite that's being flown and they have to live with it and they don't know what are the plans for that area.
Rather than try to answer that, looking at the back of the room is Adrian Cooper, who I did asked to come and comment on it. So would you like to come? Because I think we're all of the same view. The Black Country haven't given the evidence to support why we should do something. Now, how long are we going to give them? Because this whole document will need to go forward in the autumn, won't it? So if they don't do something in the next 2 or 3 months, do we just say, sorry, tough?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the report makes it clear that there's a clear distinction being drawn between those sites which we are recommending to you as preferred strategic sites for development and the proposals at Junction 3. And the reason for that is quite simply that we don't have the information available to us dealing with specifically issues around what are the alternatives which the Black Country boroughs have looked at and what are the implications of those alternatives to what they're asking us to consider. Until we can answer that question, until we can see what are the things they've considered, what are the implications for Shropshire, what would the impacts be from this thing, and the expectation normally is that we don't do this sort of thing in the Greenbelt. There has to be a particularly good argument, and we have to be able to justify that outcome against the alternatives that are available to meet that need. Now, it's the Black Country's development needs, not ours. So what are the alternatives available to them for meeting their needs? What they tell us is that they've done work which suggests they can't accommodate that need within their own area on the brownfield sites that they have. We need to see that substantiated. We don't have that information at this point, and until we do, we didn't feel in a position to make a recommendation to you about it.
But we're in June now.
Yeah.
We need to submit this document in the autumn.
So expectation, the way this would play forward is, as Councillor Macy has said in terms of the description of the timetable that's also being put before you. The next stage is to come up, after we've consulted on this, assuming that this paper is passed today, extended consultation over the summer. The next stage is to assemble a full draft of the plan, and that will cover all of the stages that you've had so far since 2017, together with the policies, addressing Councillor Dean's point. At the moment, what we're doing is consulting on different bits of the plan at a time. It's a very big document, it's a very lengthy and complicated process, and we need to take it a bit at a time. So it hasn't looked at policies thus far. It will do that as part of a full draft plan plan, which we are expecting to present to you as cabinet in March.
Right.
And that would deal with any outcome, allow us to see what the people have to say about Junction 3, the pros and cons. It provides the Black Country boroughs with an opportunity to share with us evidence about why they think we should do this, and it's a reasonable option, and it can be justified. And that is, in effect, the break point. If they haven't done that by March, or we're not satisfied with what we received from them by March, or the volume of
Can I
consultation
suggest, I
responses.
hear what you're saying, but for us to be able to consider them, really, we need to at least have their response by the end of the year. Because I think if they haven't just, and even if they provide the evidence, we don't necessarily have to support it. I must make that clear.
Exactly, we're not under
You know, but we
obligation.
have, but any evidence they want to put forward, to me, it seems they must do by the end of December, to give us a realistic opportunity to look at it and understand what it all means, for there to be any possibility of it being agreed. So I think in terms of what the public need to know is that they need to know, we need to have any arguments that can come forward from the Black Country by the end of the year, for them even to be considered. That's not to say we will accept them, but for us to even consider them. Is that reasonable?
Yes, it will take us some time to draft a full draft of the plan after all several
Yeah.
weeks. So I'm sure before we can get that to you in March. So.
I have to say, I think the other sites, as all the speakers have indicated, seem straightforward. I'm sure there will be odd points that crop up, but I'm not expecting major problems with any of the other sites. But I think this is the key one, that is the difficult area, shall we say, for Shropshire Council, and we will have to wait and see. I think there is a change of mood, whereas say 2 or 3 years ago there was more enthusiasm to look at these sites. I think that enthusiasm is waning, shall we say, quite rapidly at the moment, and so they will have to provide some very, very compelling evidence for us to consider whether we want to do anything at Junction 3. So, yeah. Is that a fair comment? Right, Rob?
Yeah, I've been making notes as we go along just to cover it. I mean, as Adrian said, our duty as an authority is we have a duty under statute to cooperate with them. But that's as far as it goes. We don't have to take these and so on. So I'd agree that the onus is on them to make a compelling case to us for us to consider. But at this stage, we haven't made any decisions, even direction with that. I was just going to address a couple of the things that have been raised by members. Obviously, in terms of David Turner sort of spoke about Ironbridge and are we considering the impacts and phasing and so on. I mean, all the things he's talking about around planning for traffic, for the facilities like schools and medical and so on, I think we'd all agree that goes to what we would probably term as good development. And these larger sites do offer the opportunity to do that through master planning and so on. And because a number of them will take many years to come forward, there is time to engage with stakeholders and communities and so on to drive that process into what would be acceptable. Just taking Councillor Evans's point about Ironbridge in particular, and the fact he thinks there's more potential for business rates. I mean, I know he knows the site well, but as the leader has prompted, there is a significant amount of business premises put on there, but the offset has to be larger in this case because of all the remediation work that would have to take place on the site. This is not just a normal cost subsidy site where you would build some housing to offset building some business premises. There is all of the work that's needed to be done to decommission the site as well. So I think that's something we've got to take into account when the promoters are coming forward with that. And it was just mainly as well, Councillor Dean's point about we should be building in urban areas and so on. Well, that's entirely consistent with what we've outlined as part of the local plan, which is we are focusing development on the built urban developments as far as possible. These sites, as Adrian's referred to, we have to demonstrate exceptional circumstances for those to come forward. They are out of where we would normally be. The rest of the pattern of development is around existing settlements. So, but I think at this stage, yeah.
Okay. I need to apologise to Claire. I put you on the list and then I
Yes,
missed you, so
definitely.
Claire Wilde also wanted to speak. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you very much. So I say this every time I speak, and the press never listen.
I'll say it one more time.
Come on, press, you don't listen.
No, Joe, in fair, Joe Gallagher does, but she should start it again.
I'm still quoting you on that.
The Iron Bridge site is 99% in Shropshire, 99% in the parish of Buildworth, and 1% in Telford. In fact, the only thing in Telford is the main entrance. Buildworth Parish Council is quite small. They have about 130 dwellings. So this is going to have a major impact on the whole of the parish and their lives and their quality of life and how they've lived. So we need to do our best, and I think Adrian and his team have done, but to actually support the parish council, because this is absolutely huge. It's, it's going to be nearly 10 times the size of what they've got at the moment. And I take on board the point David said and Rob said about phasing, because I think this the phasing has got to be right with this development, just because of the sheer impact of what it's going to have on the surrounding areas. Traffic obviously is going to grow exponentially. We are meeting with Harworth in the next few weeks. We're meeting with the planners. It's going to have a tremendous effect. Hopefully the railway and the sustainable transport will help people, but ultimately people are going to be using the roads. They're going to either go to David, Matchway Lock, or through Buildworth, Slayton, Eton, Constantine, Cressage, Atcham, Crosshouses. There's going to be a lot of small parishes affected by this development, and it's really important that we work together to try and mitigate some of the impact this is going to have. So the railway is really, really important. Can't emphasise that enough. If we could get that up and running, not just to deal with the freight, but to deal with the passengers afterwards, if we could get that linked up, that would be absolutely fantastic. There is a lot of the site that's on a floodplain, so there will be, we're fortunate in that there will be quite a few sports facilities, walking, cycling, so that aspect of it is good. But the numbers, the sheer numbers, 1,000 homes, and you can't just dump 1,000 homes on a community of 130 houses.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer, and I'm just asking the question. Should we consider creating a new parish for this development, rather than it being tagged onto the parish that already exists? I'll leave you to think on that one.
And I think for community cohesion and all the rest of it, I think that's one of the issues that we've got to clearly discuss, because people there will identify probably with 3 different areas. Some people will identify with Iron Bridge, some people will identify with Matchway Lock, and some people will actually identify with the parish. So I think that's something that's going to that's going to come out of it. But we need to make sure that it's not just a development stuck in the middle somewhere. That they do integrate into all the different communities around about. That's why it's really important that it's phased, and that the local parish council has the support of Shropshire Council, because it has an incredibly small precept. The clerk has a few hours a week. So, we do need to support these small communities if we're going to put all this development in there. Thank you.
And the other thing I would comment on, even though Telford and Reading have only got a very, very small percentage of the site, we are working with them, we are talking to them all the time. They're a bit of a noisy neighbour at times, and sometimes they do shout more than they need to. But we are working with them on this site, and they are having an input into what's going on.
And can I just add to that next week, Harworth have arranged a transport session with Telford and Reading and Shropshire. So yes, we have all been working together. It's just that I feel sorry for builders, because they get swamped. Because they get all their neighbours coming in, having opinions, but actually it is their parish.
Right, Steve.
Again, this is just a question really, or comment. I believe Telford Parish actually Telford Council. But
Don't call them a parish council.
No, I nearly did. Telford Council, I put a cabinet member on their 1%. So really, should we not be looking somewhere along the line of doing something similar?
Yeah, that is
just
in my
a thought.
mind, as you're well aware. Right, Rob, do you want anything to finish?
No, it was only to say that, as Councillor Wells referred to, there's already been lots of engagement with the wide range of stakeholders. I know she's been very diligent in attending the events that have been put on and seeking the views of it. So I think that as long as that continues throughout the process, through this consultation and perhaps beyond, I think we end up with the chance to create, and it essentially is creating a new community there, as you're saying, that fits well with the others around it. But that will take a lot of work and a lot of time. And actually, it was quite heartening to hear on the radio this morning that the Tufton Region portfolio holder was saying that they're supporting our approach to good development and taking into account all of these things and the impacts of them. So, yeah, I think we've got a way to move forward on that side.
Right, now I'm going to move to the recommendations. I'm just reading recommendation 1, thinking whether it does refer in the proper way to junction 3 or whether we need to strengthen it a little bit. Now I suppose it's going out to consultation, isn't it? So we mustn't be seen to direct how that consultation.
Yeah, I think at this stage you'll note that the wording is around there is the fact of we are not identifying it, but we are seeking views on it, and I think that's quite right. The community can see what is being put out so far, and they can feed back to us.
Okay, right. So everyone understands the recommendations? Right. All those in favour, please show. Right, thank you. That's unanimous. Right, we move on to the page. And the next item is to exclude the press and public. Or if the press don't run late, we're happy to talk to you on one or two of these items. So can I see it below? I move